I work with world leaders, the White House press corps, CEOs, and Grammy Award winners, analyzing, building, and repairing voices. But today, I'd like to begin by asking you to imagine this. What if I was able to arrange for you, by surprise, a quick half-hour interview for the precise career you've wanted since you were a kid, but it has to start in 5 minutes? How would you do? Or, what if I set you up on a date with the most beautiful person you'd ever met? And when you got there, and they looked at you for the first time with those big, doughy eyes, could you be charming? Or would you blow it? Because if we have the right intentions, and we know exactly what we want to say, shouldn't that be all we need? No. Because there's another problem. Something else has been working against you. Something that directly counters your every move. You step right, in front of you it steps left. You back up, it moves forward. But still, you never see it. In fact, it's been learning from you, analyzing you, surreptitiously exploiting your weaknesses to take advantage of you. And as successful as it has been at this, at no point did you realize it was happening. Now, that's not entirely your fault. You see, over the years, you've been consistently and systematically undermined, deceived, and outright lied to by the last person you'd ever suspect. You. You see, whenever we speak, without realizing it, we communicate our fears and insecurities clearly to those around us. This is done not through our words, but through the sounds we make while saying them. In fact, these sounds may not only conflict with what we're saying, but actually provide others access to our private thoughts, opinions, and fears. If you think the thoughts in your head are just for you, you're wrong. Because we've been making sounds like these for thousands of years to communicate our feelings, long before we had spoken language. And we still use them today. We just don't consciously notice them anymore. But they're still there. These sounds are known as vocal cues. Some people ask me if vocal cues aren't just body language for the voice. They are a little bit. But they're more intense and much more concealed from us. During a 5-minute conversation where we might see 1 or 2 variations in body position, we might hear as many as 20 or 30 vocal cues. And unlike body language, the same vocal cue can be reinforced over and over, repeated with every few words. That makes managing vocal cues much harder than managing body language. And in fact, having control over your body language may just make your vocal cues more pronounced. Recently, while facilitating a negotiation, I was working with them, and the lead for the opposing counsel was exceedingly confident. He knew exactly how to manipulate his body language. He wore the right suit, held the appropriate posture, and made the most intimidating facial expressions. As he spoke, however, I noticed him clear his dry throat for the 4th time. And then he made an apology for his nagging allergies. I signaled that our team needed a moment in private, and we retired to an adjoining room. I said, "This guy doesn't have allergies. There's no mucus on his cords. There's no vocal edema, no swelling. His real problem is that he's stressed out of his mind. And whatever it is he's afraid of, we possess it. And with that, we return back to the table and manage to capitalize on this new information. But how did I know that? It's because every time he started to speak, the first few words were said with a dry hiss. A dry throat can be a consistent indicator of stress, but that alone wasn't enough to condemn him. It was the fact that he lied about his allergies, which meant he knew he was stressed and he was trying to cover it up, that was truly incriminating. So his lie about the allergies, combined with his dry throat, produced a vocal cue that was a direct link to his level of stress, and one that completely negated the image he was trying to portray. But why do we get stressed? Why do we get a dry throat when we're stressed? It's because when we're plunged into an emergency circumstance, our body begins to shut down all non-essential functions. One of the first functions to go is digestion. The first step in the digestive process is the production of saliva, which, as it happens, also acts as a lubricant for the vocal cords. No saliva, no lubrication. No lubrication, no clarity of sound. This is why he had the urge to clear his throat every time he started to speak. He was oblivious to the vocal cue that betrayed his body language. We can lie with our words, but we cannot lie with that which we don't know exists. Therefore, truth for all of us resides in the unavoidable sounds we make. This even happens when we're saying something completely scripted, when we know every word we're going to say. Like, have you ever been told a joke by a 9-year-old kid? It's excruciating. It's kind of cute, but it's a horrible, horrible experience. The reason for this is kids are like little approval-guided missiles, zeroing in on anywhere they think they can hit a little piece of validation. And so when they tell a joke, even if they know every word, we hear their need instead of the punchline. Insecurity will always make sounds that bleed out between our words. So even when we're saying something exceedingly simple, like a single sentence, this kind of thing happens all the time. Like, has anyone ever said something like this to you? Honey, I love you. With that really long you at the end? It's called a leading tone. What's this person actually saying? The high-level tone at the end of a sentence is a prompt. It's actually asking a question. So they're not saying, I love you. They're asking, do you love me? So now that we have some idea that we're constantly giving off these vocal cues, that must give us the ability to begin to manage them, right? A little bit. But there are lots and lots of vocal cues. To date, we've cataloged over 1,200 neuro-mechanical reactions to stress, or vocal cues. So for most of us, vocal cues simply come too quickly and occur too often to provide us with any sense of control, even when we go well out of our way to manipulate them. Recently, I was listening to someone give testimony about how their wife had somehow managed to wander off and go missing. He stammered and sputtered about the anguish of not knowing. I leaned into the person next to me and whispered, he's lying. Or rather, he's intentionally choking himself up. What I'm referring to is when we become emotionally choked up, muscles constrict around our airway, making it difficult to breathe and thus to speak. This is the same forceful contraction of the musculature that occurs when we cry. However, what this guy was doing was almost the exact opposite. His jaw was dropped, leaving a lot of space in the trachea through which air could escape. And so to mitigate this problem, he held his cords firmly together. Little squirts of air come between them as he spoke. I said, either this is the only guy in the world that gets choked up this way, or he's lying. So should any of you decide to off your spouse and choose the "I must have misplaced them" defense, you might want to do a bit more study. Or just don't do that. You see, when it comes to our voice, we have a choice. We can either have the right thoughts in our head, which produce the right sounds, or we can just say the right sounds anyway, regardless of what we're thinking. I know it's hard to put the right thoughts in your head, and a lot of the time it's virtually impossible. But when it comes to what you want, don't tell us the negative thoughts in your head, because they can deprive you of everything, from your deepest desires to your most profound relationships. All right, so when we're talking, here are a few basic things to remember. 1, know when you want to ask a question. Only in a sentence on a high pitch when you intend to ask for something. If you do this while making a statement, you're telling us that you're unsure and possibly looking for approval. 2, don't speak in a combination of high and soft tones. If you do this, you're telling us that you're insecure and guarded. 3, excoriate all signs of need from your communication. You see, unless you're in an intimate situation, need is often repellent to the listener. It shows that you're thinking about yourself more than them. Instead, try to concentrate on their experience of how they perceive your message. 4, take the right number of breaths. This is called midpoint targeting. It simply means that there's an appropriate range of breaths to take per minute. If you take too many breaths while speaking, it shows anxiety. If you take too few breaths while speaking and you just blow through the natural breaks between the sentences, it shows aggression. 5, don't kill your spouse. So where does this lead us? What's the next step in vocal technology? Recently, while testing some advanced vocal theory, people started coming to us and saying that they not only felt relief from vocal strain, vocal stress, but from their overall stress as well. And we wondered if we hadn't stumbled across a link between someone's voice and the ability to remove things like negative emotions. Further testing only seemed to substantiate this. Was it possible that we could negate things like stress instead of having invasive procedures and medicine? We could instead use a set of targeted vocal actions. Is it possible that instead of prescribing a medication, we could instead prescribe a set of actions? And if so, perhaps then, while we're pursuing a perfect career, grabbing that second date, or negotiating our best deal, all of us will no longer have the need to conceal so many of our negative thoughts. Thank you.